He cried a single tear with his eyes still closed, an impossible tear rolling down the cheek of a millionaire who hadn't moved in a week, just as a 6-year-old's hand tightened around his, and every monitor in the room jumped like a heart, remembering its job. I'm John Parker, and today's story will touch your heart. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and give your like. It's very important to me. And tell us in the comments which city or country you're listening from. Now, listen closely. St. Bartholomew Medical Center, Dallas, Texas, where the smell of antiseptic rode the air like a stern nurse, and the VIP floor hummed with money trying to buy time. In Suite 1412, Grayson Whitmore lay beneath a web of wires and numbers. Real estate tycoon, 38, the sort of man who made headlines for buying skylines and never returning phone calls. A rain-polished accident on the tollway had folded his sleek car like a book shut too fast. He hadn't opened his eyes since, outside that glass door, Naomi Brooks stood clutching a thrift store purse and the hand of her little girl. Lily, 6 years old, dressed with tiny sunflowers, gazed like a window nobody could fog. Naomi was a maid, the woman who moved through rich people's homes like a helpful breeze, seen, thanked, forgotten. She had dusted Whitmore mantles, pressed Whitmore shirts, picked up Whitmore cufflinks from under a Whitmore sofa. But she had never dared speak to the man beyond, "Yes, sir, and good morning." This morning, Lily had woken before dawn and said something that hollowed Naomi's stomach. "Mama, the man with the green eyes is lost in a dark hallway. He can't find the door. He keeps saying he's sorry to a little girl with fair hair." Naomi knew those eyes. She'd seen them in black and white photos on the Whitmore piano, the edge turned down like a hush. She'd heard the rumors the staff whisper when the elevator doors closed, an old family secret, a grief packed in cedar and sealed with money. But there was no space for superstition in an apartment where the rent ate first and the fridge answered back with echo. Until Lily said it again, calmer this time, like a nurse giving instructions. He needs someone to hold his hand. By 8:30, Naomi's fingers were shaking as she signed her name at the VIP desk. The receptionist, a woman with impeccable eyeliner and a badge that could cut glass, scanned Naomi top to bottom. Thrift store shoes, altered skirt, child at her side. "Family only," the woman said, and then hesitated, because Naomi spoke the way working people do when they've already apologized to the world 100 times today and can't afford the luxury of an argument. "I'm his housekeeper," Naomi said, voice steady because she made it so. 5 years. A call went upstairs. A pause, the smallest nod. 10 minutes, the gatekeeper said at last. "And the child must be quiet." The elevator rose like a prayer, trying not to shake. Naomi pressed Lily's hand and tried to frame this madness into a rule she could live with. If the hospital said no, they would go. If the hospital said yes, they would be careful and small and gone again. But as the doors opened, Lily didn't look small. She looked certain. Behind the glass, Dr. Ethan Caldwell, neurologist with silver at his temples and coffee that had gone cold hours ago, studied the plateau of Grayson's EEG. He was a scientist, not a poet. He liked things that could be measured, pressure, pulses, the silent geometry of brain waves. He didn't like anomalies. He especially didn't like the rumor that had drifted down from admitting that a maid and a child were on their way to the room like an uninvited hymn. Naomi entered like someone stepping into church without a hymn book. The machines kept their indifferent pulse. The room kept its VIP quiet. She had expected to feel fear. Instead, she felt anger, a low, steady kind that warmed her palms. Anger at the shiny emptiness of it all, at the way the rich man looked so young on all those screens, at the way grief could sit on a chest and no one in the room could see it. Lily did not hesitate. She walked to the bed as if she'd been called by name and, ignoring every adult rule in the air, she reached for his hand. A hum rose under the skin of the room. The heart monitor hiccuped, then found a stronger rhythm. The EEG, once a lazy horizon, began writing small mountains across the screen. Numbers ticked upward like tiny victories daring to be loud. Naomi froze. Dr. Caldwell stepped in, professional face cracking at the edges. A nurse whisper swore under her breath, in a way only Texas can make sound polite. Lily's voice came soft, like a bedtime story told to a man who had never been tucked in. "It's okay," she said, to him, not to the adults. "It's dark, but there's a door. You don't have to be sorry anymore." If the room breathed, it did so quietly. Naomi realized she had been holding hers since the elevator. The millionaire's eyelids did not open. But a tear, God help them all, a tear, welled and slipped, carving a clean path down the bruise on his cheek. "Reflex," the nurse offered, "because adults prefer boxes." "Maybe," Dr. Caldwell said, "because science prefers caution." But his hands were already moving, checking, documenting, widening the definition of possible by an inch. In Dallas, people carry faith the way they carry umbrellas. Might need it, might not. Better to have one. Naomi thought of all the times she had whispered to her coffee, to her bus pass, to the ceiling she couldn't afford to paint. "Give me away." She thought of the first day she'd met the Whitmore house, noisy art on the walls and quiet people inside them. She had seen a photograph then, a boy with the same green eyes, clutching a little girl with hair like sunlight over milk. She remembered the way the frame had been turned face down one afternoon and never righted in her presence again. "Ma'am," Dr. Caldwell said, voice gentler now, "I don't know what this is, but keep talking if you want to." Naomi didn't know how to talk to a coma. She knew how to leave a kitchen shinier than she found it. She knew, "How are you, Mr. Whitmore? And will you need dinner late?" She knew, "Please God, make the bus on time." But she didn't know how to speak into the dark. Then Lily squeezed the millionaire's hand, as if to borrow a little courage, and Naomi remembered an old hymn she hadn't let herself sing since life got loud. She stepped closer. "Mr. Whitmore," she said carefully, "the way you approach a wounded animal and your own pride at the same time." "Grayson." "It's Naomi, the one who keeps misplacing your cufflinks and then finding them again." The EEG climbed another inch. Down the hall, an elevator dinged. The Whitmore name traveled like weather. Miles Whitmore, younger brother, lawyer's posture, strode toward the room with a phone pressed to his ear, issuing instructions no one would remember. Eleanor Whitmore, mother, pearls that could have paid a mortgage, walked slower as though each step had to be approved by a grief she'd never given herself permission to feel. And Lauren, sister-in-law, PR smile that could calm a storm, held it together like she'd be graded for it. The family gathered at the glass and found their reflection standing beside their fortune. A maid, a child, a miracle daring to happen without an appointment. If betrayal has a face, sometimes it looks like bureaucracy. Mr. Victor Sloan, hospital legal, sharp suit, sharper voice, appeared with a clipboard and a policy in his pocket. "We can't have unauthorized," he began, but the machines spoke over him with a chorus of numbers that refused to sit down. Dr. Caldwell lifted a hand. "Wait, because skepticism must learn manners when facts get loud." Lily kept talking, but not about medicine. About small things that tell the truth sideways. "We had cinnamon toast, and Mama said that if the toast burns, we scrape off the black and try again." Naomi closed her eyes at that, mortified by the poverty of it and fiercely proud of the lesson. Redemption, carved into breakfast. Grief made space for itself in the millionaire's chest, and then, startlingly, made space for air. Naomi watched the pulse steady. She watched a line on a screen shrug off its laziness and push. She thought of every rich, poor room she had ever stood in and how they all smelled the same once someone cried. Outside, Dallas kept being Dallas. Pickup trucks in rush hour, church signs promising Sundays, heat climbing the glass even in spring. Inside, the climate shifted in a way the thermostat couldn't measure. Family secrets, the kind money wraps in linen, stirred. Somewhere in the architecture of Whitmore history, a door unlatched. Naomi wanted to step back, to let the doctors translate the miracle into syllables they could bill for. But Lily didn't let go, and neither did the numbers. The child's brow furrowed with a seriousness older than 6. "She says you can stop apologizing." Lily whispered, and the air changed, because everyone in the room knew who she was without saying it. Eleanor's hand flew to her throat. Miles's jaw softened by a fraction. Lauren's mascara did heroic work. Dr. Caldwell wrote faster without realizing it. Mr. Sloane lowered his clipboard as if it had become heavy. People like to pretend that fate arrives with trumpets. It doesn't. It arrives as a janitor's cart squeaking by, as a nurse adjusting a blanket, as a nanny or maid refusing to move because a child said stand still. It arrives as a tear no textbook is prepared to grade. Naomi felt something between terror and peace bloom behind her ribs. She thought of the betrayal of tired systems, protocols that protect prestige over people, and of humble things that redeem. A song, a touch, a stubborn hope. She was not rich, not well-connected, not on the guest list of anybody's life. But in this room, her voice suddenly mattered. "Grayson," she said again, steady now, "if there's a door, we'll stand by it with the light on." The monitors held their small mountains. The green eyes stayed closed. The tear dried into a shining line, and for the first time since the accident, the room felt less like a waiting room and more like a threshold. Outside the glass, the Whitmores argued with their reflections, lawyer instincts, mother's fear, PR control. Inside, a maid and her child kept vigil over redemption that didn't ask permission. Somewhere, failure and forgiveness stared at each other across 30 years and reached for a handshake. Dr. Caldwell cleared his throat, a man about to commit the professional sin of believing what he saw. "All right," he said quietly to no one and everyone. "Let's see how far this goes." And just then, as if the body had been waiting for the soul to get a head start, Grayson's fingers twitched, small, undeniable, answering Lily's grip with a fragile echo. The room did not erupt. It held its breath because hope, when it is real, arrives on tiptoe. What Lily will say next, and what the Whitmore family will do when old guilt collides with new grace, will decide whether this moment becomes a footnote or a miracle with witnesses. The silence that followed that twitch was electric, the kind that crackles over a Texas field before a storm. Lily didn't flinch. She just leaned closer, as if she'd been waiting for this exact moment all along. "You're not alone anymore," she whispered, her small fingers still wrapped around his. "I'm right here." Naomi felt her throat tighten. She wanted to scoop Lily up and run before someone told them to get out, before this fragile miracle could be broken by rules or rich people's voices. But she couldn't move. Something in the air held her there, like she'd been placed exactly where she was supposed to be. Dr. Ethan Caldwell finally exhaled, the sound almost reverent. "This is remarkable," he murmured, scanning the monitors. "Pressure's stabilizing. Brain activity is climbing. This doesn't happen on its own." Naomi blinked, barely breathing. "So you think she's really helping him?" Dr. Caldwell looked at her, his usual clinical mask slipping. "I think," he said slowly, "that if I didn't know better, I'd call this a response." He glanced at Lily. "And I don't know how she's doing it." Before Naomi could answer, the glass door slid open. The Whitmores entered like a tide of expensive perfume and tension. Miles Whitmore, always the attorney even off duty, immediately took in the scene with calculating eyes. "What is going on here?" His tone was sharp but not loud. He was the kind of man who could make an entire room freeze with quiet words. Dr. Caldwell turned toward him, professional but calm. "Your brother just showed his first voluntary response since the accident. It happened the moment this child touched his hand." Miles's gaze snapped to Naomi, then to Lily. "She's the housekeeper's kid," he said flatly, as though he were stating an irrelevant fact. "Yes," Naomi admitted, forcing her voice not to shake. "I work at your brother's home. I've been with your family 5 years. Eleanor Whitmore stepped closer to the bed, pearls glinting against the pale hospital light. There was fear behind her controlled expression, the fear of a mother who had already lost too much. "Dr. Caldwell," she said, voice taut, "are you telling me this child might be the reason Grayson's getting better?" The doctor hesitated, choosing his words carefully. I'm telling you that every measurable sign in this room improved the moment she touched him. I can't explain it scientifically, but I also can't ignore it. Lauren, the sister-in-law, was the first to speak softly. Then let her stay. Miles shot her a look, but she didn't back down. You see what's happening? If there's even a chance she's helping, why would we stop her? It's not that simple, Miles countered. Hospitals have protocols. We don't even know these people's intentions. That word, these people, hit Naomi like a slap. Her first instinct was to defend herself, to explain how she had scrubbed Whitmore floors while fighting off tears because she couldn't pay for Lily's school uniform. But before she could open her mouth, Lily spoke up. He's scared, she said matter-of-factly, looking directly at Miles. The room stilled. Who? Miles asked, eyebrows raised. Your brother, Lily answered simply. He thinks you're still mad at him. Naomi's heart skipped. The temperature in the room seemed to drop a degree. Miles's jaw tightened, as though Lily had reached straight into a locked drawer inside his chest. You don't know what you're talking about, he said stiffly. Yes, I do, Lily said, her tone calm, almost kind. He says he never meant for you to feel betrayed. Eleanor's hand went to her throat again. Betrayed? She echoed, her voice barely above a whisper. The family exchanged quick glances, loaded with unspoken history. Naomi sensed a fracture line running through these wealthy people, some secret they'd been standing on for years. Dr. Caldwell looked from one face to the other, sensing the tension. Whatever history you have, he said gently, it may actually be relevant. Patients in coma sometimes respond to familiar voices, to emotional triggers. Miles took a slow step closer to the bed, his face a mask of something between anger and pain. If you can really hear me, he said to his brother, then you know I was only trying to protect the family when I pulled that deal. I didn't want you to lose everything. The monitors reacted again, heart rate climbing just slightly, Lauren gasped. Did you see that? Dr. Caldwell nodded, already scribbling notes. He's responding to emotional stimuli. This is huge. Lily's small voice cut through the rising hum. He forgives you, she said softly. But you have to forgive yourself too. Miles froze. His eyes glistened despite himself. Naomi watched this exchange, her heart pounding. This wasn't just about a millionaire waking up. This was about something deeper, a family secret, a wound that had been festering for years, and she had a terrible, beautiful feeling that whatever had broken this family apart was about to come into the light. Dr. Caldwell glanced at the clock. I'm going to order a full neuroscan, he said, suddenly energized. If this continues, we may be looking at one of the most significant recoveries this hospital has ever documented. Miles didn't take his eyes off Lily. Do what you need to do, he said quietly to the doctor. Then to Naomi, you and your daughter. Stay! Naomi blinked, stunned. Are you sure? I'm sure, Miles said, his voice heavy with something that sounded almost like surrender. If my brother trusts her, I won't be the one to stop this. Naomi looked down at Lily, who smiled faintly, as if she had known this outcome all along, and then, from somewhere deep in the stillness, a low sound filled the room. It was faint, hoarse, but unmistakable. A groan. Grayson Whitmore's chest shifted as though he were struggling toward the surface of a deep, dark lake. Eleanor gasped, one manicured hand covering her mouth. Lauren clutched Miles's arm. Dr. Caldwell was already shouting for the nurse on call. Naomi gripped Lily's shoulder. Baby, she whispered, I think he's waking up. But Lily's expression was strangely calm, as though she'd been expecting this moment her whole life. Not yet, she said softly, watching Grayson's face with solemn eyes. He's just looking for the door, and with that the room's tension shifted again, because everyone could feel it now. Whatever was about to happen next would change not just Grayson's life, but all of theirs, and no one, not even Naomi, was ready for the secret about to surface. The faint groan seemed to echo in everyone's chest, like the sound of old hinges turning on a locked door. Grayson's fingers twitched again, this time more deliberately, and the heart monitor began a new rhythm, steady, confident, as though his body had just remembered how to fight. Dr. Ethan Caldwell moved quickly to the bedside, his trained eyes watching every response, every flicker across Grayson's face. "He's fighting to surface," the doctor said, almost to himself. "He's closer than he's been since the accident." Eleanor Whitmore was frozen, tears forming beneath her perfectly lined eyes. "Grayson," she whispered, her voice trembling like porcelain about to crack. "My baby boy. If you can hear me, come back to us." The machines seemed to respond again, climbing another notch as if her words had weight. Lily stood on tiptoe, her sunflower dress brushing against the bed. "He can hear you," she said, her tone calm, certain. "But he's scared to open his eyes because the house is still dark." Naomi shivered. "What do you mean, Lily?" "She says he's in a big house with no lights on," Lily explained softly. "He keeps calling for her, but he can't find the room where she is." Eleanor let out a sob she'd been holding for years. Naomi saw it, the pain of a woman who had kept her grief locked in a closet so deep it never saw daylight. Dr. Caldwell glanced at Eleanor. Who is she talking about? For a long moment no one spoke. The hum of the machines filled the room like an accusation. Then Eleanor's voice, low and hollow, broke the silence. "Diana," she said. "His sister." Miles closed his eyes briefly. Lauren's hand squeezed his arm. Naomi pieced it together from the whispers she'd overheard in the Whitmore mansion, the family photo that had been turned face down. Diana, the little girl who had died decades ago. Lily nodded, as though this confirmed what she already knew. "She's with him," she said. "But she wants him to come back. She says he has work to do." A nurse entered, wheeling in portable equipment for a neuroscan, but no one moved to make space. Everyone was spellbound, staring at Lily as though she had become the room's translator between two worlds. "Work to do?" Miles asked cautiously. "She says he's supposed to fix something," Lily explained, her little brow furrowed with concentration. "Something that broke a long time ago, something between you two." Miles's face hardened, the mask of a lawyer who'd been holding back his own ghosts. "That's none of this child's," but Lily interrupted gently, her voice not sharp but steady. "She says it's time." Dr. Caldwell cleared his throat. "Mr. Whitmore," he said carefully, "I don't pretend to understand what's happening here, but we are watching measurable, real-time changes in your brother's condition while this little girl speaks. Whatever emotional weight you're carrying, it might be helping him to let it out." Miles's shoulders dropped a fraction. He stepped closer to the bed, staring at his brother's bruised face. "You stubborn fool," he muttered, his voice cracking just enough to reveal the man beneath the suit. "You really couldn't forgive me, could you?" Lauren touched his arm. "Maybe this is your chance to tell him you're sorry." Miles swallowed hard. "I am sorry, Gray," he said, the words sounding foreign in his own mouth. "I should have trusted you. I should have told you the truth about why I killed that deal. It wasn't about the money. It was about protecting you from people who would have taken everything from us." The room seemed to hold its breath. The monitors spiked again, Grayson's pulse climbing like someone running for daylight. Naomi's heart hammered. She could almost feel the air thickening, charged with years of unsaid words, unhealed wounds. Eleanor stepped forward, laying a trembling hand on her son's arm. "Grayson," she said softly, "I forgive you for the anger you've carried all these years. And I'm sorry for not finding a way to take the pain from you. If you can come back to us, we can start over." Lily's face lit with something like relief. "She heard you," she whispered. "She says that's what he needed." And then it happened, sudden, unmistakable. A tear escaped from the corner of Grayson's closed eye, a single, shining drop cutting through the bruise on his cheek. Eleanor gasped and gripped Naomi's arm for support. Miles's mouth fell open. Lauren let out a sound halfway between a laugh and a sob. "That's impossible," Dr. Caldwell said, shaking his head in wonder. "Patients in deep coma don't show emotional tears. This is—" He trailed off, unable to find the word. "Miracle," Naomi whispered. The doctor didn't correct her, but before the family could fully absorb what they had just witnessed, the door to the room swung open sharply. Mr. Victor Sloan, the hospital's chief of compliance, strode in, followed by 2 security guards. His expression was unreadable, but his presence carried the weight of authority. "This unauthorized visitation ends now," he said crisply. "We've had complaints about a child being in the ICU without clearance. Hospital policy does not allow this." Eleanor straightened, outrage flashing in her eyes. "This child just saved my son's life." "With respect, Mrs. Whitmore," Sloan replied smoothly, "we have to think about liability. If this goes public, the hospital will be accused of negligence. This could create a scandal." Miles stepped forward, lawyer mode engaged. "If you're suggesting removing them, you'll be doing so against my direct instruction. This is a private suite. My family's footing the bill. They stay. I'm afraid it's not that simple," Sloan countered, his tone cool but firm. "Our legal department has already been notified. If this continues, we may be forced to escalate." Lily, still holding Grayson's hand, looked up at the man with the clipboard. Her voice was small but carried more weight than the polished words of any attorney. "You're scared," she said simply. The room fell silent. Sloan blinked, visibly unsettled. "Excuse me?" "You're scared people won't believe in the hospital anymore if they know what happened here," Lily said softly. "But this isn't something bad. It's something good. It means people can get better, even when doctors say there's no hope." Naomi felt her breath catch. The security guards exchanged awkward glances. Dr. Caldwell stepped in. "Mr. Sloan," he said firmly, "I am personally documenting every second of this. If you remove them now, you'll be obstructing what could be a medical breakthrough. Do you really want that responsibility?" Sloan hesitated, clearly weighing the legal implications. "Sir," one of the guards said carefully, "look at the monitors." The guy's improving. The room was charged now, 2 forces colliding, protocol versus possibility. Naomi could feel the ground shift beneath her feet, and then Grayson's chest rose with a deeper breath, his head turning slightly toward Lily's voice. The billionaire was trying to wake up, and Naomi knew with bone-deep certainty that the moment he opened his eyes, nothing, not rules, not lawsuits, not power, would ever be the same again. But someone in that hospital wasn't ready to let this miracle go public, and the next move would decide whether Naomi and Lily would be hailed as saviors or accused of exploiting a dying man. The tension in the room was thick enough to taste, a mixture of antiseptic and fear, of hope and looming confrontation. Grayson's head shifted again, more deliberately this time, and the monitors climbed like a chorus, insisting that life was winning. "Look at him," Lauren said, her voice trembling. "He's fighting his way back. Are you seriously going to drag them out now?" Victor Sloan adjusted his tie, visibly unsettled. He had walked into hundreds of tense situations before, angry families, lawsuits, press leaks, but this felt different. There was something in the room that no policy manual could address. Naomi's chest was tight. She wanted to shield Lily from the conflict, to take her and run, before security put their hands on her baby. But Lily stood rooted, sunflower dress glowing in the sterile light, like it was its own banner of defiance. "Mr. Sloan," Dr. Caldwell said, his tone no longer asking but warning, "if you interfere now, you're risking not only a patient's recovery, but the hospital's reputation. The world will want to know why you pulled a child out of a room while a documented neurological breakthrough was taking place." Victor's jaw tightened. He was used to being the one holding the power in any room, but now, somehow, this Maid, her daughter, and a doctor with a clipboard had shifted the balance. "This is a VIP case," he reminded them, but his voice had lost some of its edge. "I have to protect the hospital." "You're protecting the wrong thing," Miles shot back, his attorney voice sharp as a scalpel. "My brother is the hospital's largest donor. If you think my family will sit quietly while you remove the only person helping him, you're gravely mistaken." Eleanor, usually the picture of restraint, finally broke. "Enough," she said, stepping between Victor and the bed. "If you touch that child, I will personally make sure this entire city knows what you tried to do here. My son is coming back to us." "And she—" Eleanor pointed at Lily, her voice softening just slightly. "She is the reason." Victor's expression flickered. The guards looked at him, waiting for direction, but he didn't speak right away. And then Lily, in the way only a child could, cut through the legal and emotional posturing with 6 words that landed like a prayer. "He says he wants us here." The room stilled. Miles glanced at Dr. Caldwell, who nodded. Patients in comas often respond to voices and touches from those they trust. If Grayson is signaling he wants her here, Lauren stepped forward. "Then we honor that." For a long moment, Victor said nothing. Then he sighed, as though the weight of the whole hospital had settled on his shoulders. 15 minutes, he said at last, his voice clipped. "But this will need to be formalized. Tomorrow we revisit." Naomi nodded quickly, relief washing through her so fast her knees nearly gave out. "Thank you," she said quietly. Victor turned and left, his 2 guards following reluctantly. The door clicked shut behind them, and the room seemed to exhale all at once. "That was close," Lauren whispered, but Lily wasn't paying attention to the adults anymore. She leaned closer to Grayson, her little voice barely above a whisper. "It's okay now," she said softly. "No one will take us away." And as if her words were a key, Grayson's eyelids fluttered, not just a reflex this time, but a sustained, trembling effort. The entire room froze, breath held as one. "Gray?" Miles whispered, stepping closer. "If you can hear me, brother, follow my voice. We're all here. Come back." Eleanor's hand pressed against her lips. "Please, God," she murmured. The heart monitor beeped faster. Grayson's fingers curled tighter around Lily's hand. His lips moved, just enough for a sound to escape, dry, hoarse, but unmistakably human. The syllable cracked, almost inaudible. But Lily's face lit with recognition. He said, "Diana," she whispered. Eleanor sobbed outright. "Oh, my baby." Lauren covered her mouth. Miles wiped at his eyes. Naomi stood still, goosebumps running down her arms. "Talk to him," Dr. Caldwell urged. "Call him back." Eleanor leaned close. "Grayson," she said, her voice breaking, "it wasn't your fault. Not then, not ever. She doesn't blame you, son. And neither do I." The monitors steadied into a strong, regular rhythm, as though some internal war had just ended. And then, impossibly, Grayson's eyes began to open, slowly, painfully, as though lifting a weight he'd carried for decades. Everyone surged forward, but Dr. Caldwell raised a hand. "Give him space." First moments are critical. Naomi's breath caught. She had never seen those green eyes up close, only in photos and from a distance while dusting his office. Now they were open and fixed directly on her. Recognition flickered there, followed by something that looked suspiciously like gratitude. "Naomi," he rasped. His first word barely a whisper. She blinked in shock. He had never once used her name before. "Yes, sir," she said softly, leaning forward. "We're here." His lips curved into the ghost of a smile. "No, sir," he whispered. "Family." The word hit Naomi like a bell ringing through her bones, and in that moment, everyone in the room knew it. The man who had gone into that coma as a guarded, unreachable billionaire was not the same man waking up. But just as relief began to wash over them, Dr. Caldwell's pager buzzed sharply. His face darkened as he read the message. "What is it?" Miles asked. Caldwell looked up, his expression grave. "Administration just called an emergency meeting. Someone filed a formal complaint accusing Naomi of exploiting the situation for money." Naomi's stomach dropped. "What?" Eleanor's voice turned cold. Lauren's eyes flashed with anger.
"Who would do something like that?"
The doctor shook his head. "I don't know. But they want her removed from the premises until they investigate." Naomi's relief turned to ice. She clutched Lily protectively, and in that charged moment, Grayson's voice rasped louder than before, breaking through the storm of decisions about to fall on them. "No one touches them," he said hoarsely, his green eyes blazing with a clarity that made the whole room fall silent. It was the first command he had given since waking up. Weak in volume, but unshakable in authority, and everyone knew the fight. For what would come next had only just begun. But who had filed that complaint and why would shatter Naomi's understanding of the Whitmore family forever. The words, "no one touches them," hung in the air like a gavel striking down judgment. Everyone froze, the gravity of Grayson's voice echoing against the walls. Miles was the first to react, stepping toward the door with the clipped authority of a man used to putting out fires. "Who filed the complaint?" he demanded. "I want names." Dr. Caldwell held up a hand. "We don't have confirmation yet, only that it was submitted anonymously to hospital administration. They're calling it a possible exploitation case." "Exploitation," Eleanor snapped, her voice like ice breaking. "This woman and her daughter saved my son's life." Lauren's jaw tightened, anger flashing in her usually controlled demeanor. "This reeks of sabotage. Someone doesn't want Naomi or Lily here. Someone wants to control the narrative." Naomi's arms tightened protectively around Lily, whose sunflower dress was now rumpled from the tension. "I swear to you," Naomi said, her voice trembling but fierce, "I never wanted anything from your family. Lily just wanted to help him." Grayson's eyes locked on hers, clearer now than before. "I know," he rasped. The simple certainty in his tone made Naomi's knees weak. "Gray," Miles said, his lawyer's mind already calculating, "we can get an injunction to keep them here. If this goes to a legal review, I'll represent them myself." "No," Grayson said, his voice still hoarse but carrying that quiet authority that silenced the room. "No legal battles, not yet. We find out who did this first." There was a soft knock on the glass door. A nurse opened it cautiously, her eyes darting around the room. "Mr. Whitmore," she said, "there's a visitor in the waiting area asking for Naomi Brooks. Says she has information about the complaint." Naomi's heart lurched. "Who?" The nurse hesitated. "She said her name is Clara." Naomi's breath caught. Clara had been another maid at the Whitmore estate until last year, when she was quietly dismissed. Rumor among the staff was that she'd been caught leaking private details about the family to tabloids. "Bring her in," Grayson ordered, his voice steadying. Moments later, Clara entered the room, clutching her purse like it was a lifeline. Her eyes darted nervously from the family to Naomi, then to Grayson in the bed. "I didn't know they'd take it this far," she blurted. "I just wanted them to look into what was happening. I didn't mean for them to try to throw her out." Naomi's stomach twisted. "You filed it?" Clara's face flushed. I told a supervisor what I heard. People in the staff break room have been whispering that you were bringing your daughter here every day to get close to Mr. Whitmore, maybe hoping for a payout when he woke up. I didn't think they'd escalate it into a formal complaint." Miles's eyes flashed. "So this is gossip?" "Pure gossip. And someone decided to turn it into an official action." Clara nodded miserably. "I'm sorry, Naomi. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just thought, if it was true, maybe they should know." Naomi felt heat rising in her chest, a mixture of humiliation and fury. "Lily came because she said he needed her," she said, her voice breaking. "Because she had dreams about him before the accident. You think I'd use my child to manipulate a man in a coma?" Clara looked stricken, glancing toward Grayson, who was now sitting up slightly against his pillows. "Every inch the man who once ran billion-dollar meetings. You think I wouldn't know the difference between greed and grace?" he said, his green eyes hard. "Naomi has been in my home for 5 years. She has never once crossed a line, but she is the only reason I'm still breathing. You will tell whoever you spoke to that this complaint is withdrawn." Clara nodded quickly, tears welling in her eyes. "Yes, Mr. Whitmore, I'll go straight to them now." When she left, silence settled again, heavy but calmer this time. Naomi sat down heavily in the chair beside the bed, her hand still wrapped around Lily's. She felt exposed, raw, but also strangely defiant. "I should have expected this," she said softly. "People like me don't belong in rooms like this. Not unless we're cleaning them." Eleanor crossed the room and took Naomi's free hand, surprising everyone, including herself. "You belong here," she said simply. "If I ever made you feel invisible in that house, I am sorry." Naomi's throat tightened. She had never heard an apology from Eleanor Whitmore in all her years of employment. Grayson watched the exchange, something unreadable in his expression. "I don't just want you here," he said slowly. "I need you here. Both of you." Miles nodded, his earlier suspicion melting into resolve. Then we fight to keep them here, Gray. If administration wants a war, we give them one. Dr. Caldwell frowned thoughtfully. Before we turn this into a legal battle, let's focus on what just happened. Mr. Whitmore, your cognitive response is improving faster than we anticipated. The connection with Lily seems to be accelerating your recovery. Then let's not waste time, Grayson said, strength creeping back into his voice. Tomorrow I want Naomi and Lily back here. And I want them protected. Naomi looked at him, startled. Protected from what? Grayson's expression darkened, the old steel of the businessman flickering back into his features. From whoever really wanted you gone, because deep down, he suspected the complaint hadn't just been idle gossip, and Naomi knew by the way he said it that the next battle wouldn't just be about hospital policy. It would be about the truth, about a family secret someone would do anything to keep buried. Night fell over Dallas like a velvet curtain, and with it came a restless energy that refused to leave Naomi in peace. Back in her tiny apartment on the east side of town, she sat at the kitchen table, staring at a chipped mug of chamomile tea that had gone cold. Lily was asleep on the pull-out couch, her tiny chest rising and falling in the rhythm of a child who trusted the world would sort itself out by morning. But Naomi's mind raced. Clara's sudden confession didn't sit right with her. Clara might have been careless, even bitter about losing her job, but Naomi knew that woman well enough to sense she wasn't malicious. Someone had pushed this complaint further than Clara ever intended. Someone with influence and a reason to want Naomi gone. Her thoughts turned over every memory of her years working in the Whitmore mansion. The hushed arguments behind closed doors. The expensive whiskey glasses left half empty in Grayson's study. The locked desk drawers she'd dusted but never dared open. There were secrets in that house, she knew. The kind that shaped the air you breathed. When she finally dozed off at the kitchen table, it was to the sound of distant sirens and the nagging sense that someone had just pulled a lever that would change everything. The next morning, Naomi and Lily returned to St. Bartholomew Medical Center under a sky still streaked with dawn. The VIP floor was buzzing more than usual. Whispered conversations among nurses cut off when Naomi walked past. It was clear word had spread. The miracle child was back. When they reached Grayson's suite, they found more than family waiting. Mr. Victor Sloan stood near the window with two administrators in suits holding clipboards like shields. Miles was there too, jaw set, suit jacket off, as if ready for a courtroom brawl. Eleanor and Lauren sat close together on the sofa, a tension visible in their shoulders. Grayson, now propped up in bed and looking more alert than he had the day before, greeted Naomi with a faint but warm smile. "You came back," he said, relief threading his hoarse voice. Naomi nodded, feeling a mix of defiance and vulnerability. "You asked me to." "Good," Grayson said. Then turning his attention to Sloan, "Let's get this over with." Sloan cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable under Grayson's steady gaze. "Mr. Whitmore, we have concluded a preliminary review of the complaint filed against Ms. Brooks. While the report lacked substantial evidence, we still have concerns about the optics of allowing an employee's child to have unsupervised access to a patient in critical condition." Miles stepped forward, his voice cold and precise. "Optics don't outweigh results. You have documented evidence that my brother's vitals improved each time Lily was present. Remove them now, and you open yourself up to accusations of obstructing his recovery. I'm not disputing the medical data," Sloan replied evenly. "But there are stakeholders concerned about liability and liability." Eleanor's voice cut sharp. "My family is the liability this hospital should be worried about if they try to take that child out of this room again." Sloan hesitated, clearly feeling the walls close in on him. Grayson's voice was calm but steel-edged. "Victor, if your priority is protecting the hospital, then listen carefully. I'm not just a patient, I'm your largest benefactor. If Naomi and Lily aren't welcome here, neither am I, and neither is my money." The administrators exchanged nervous glances. Sloan's expression tightened, but he gave a curt nod. "Very well," he said. For the time being, Ms. Brooks and her daughter may remain. But we'll be documenting everything for the hospital's records. Good, Miles said, his lawyerly tone leaving no room for debate. Document every single thing. It'll make our case even stronger if this goes public. The administrators left, clearly rattled, leaving behind an air that felt charged but victorious. Naomi let out a slow breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Thank you," she said, looking at Grayson. But Grayson didn't look triumphant. His green eyes were distant, troubled. "Don't thank me yet," he murmured. "This isn't over." He motioned for Naomi to come closer. When she did, he lowered his voice. "I've been lying in this bed for days, Naomi, thinking, listening, and I realized something. Someone didn't just want to keep you away from me. They wanted to keep me from waking up." Naomi blinked, startled. "What do you mean?" Grayson's expression hardened. "The accident." The room went still. "What about the accident?" Miles asked, stepping closer. Grayson's voice was stronger now, sharper. "I've been replaying it in my head, over and over. The brakes didn't just fail. Someone tampered with my car." The words dropped like a stone in water, sending ripples through the room. Lauren's hand flew to her mouth. Eleanor gasped audibly. Miles's face darkened. "Gray, that's a serious accusation." "It's not an accusation," Grayson said grimly. "It's a fact. And if I'm right, whoever tried to end me is the same person who filed that complaint." Naomi felt a chill run through her body. This wasn't just about gossip or optics anymore. This was about sabotage. Lily, still holding Grayson's hand, looked up at him with her steady, ancient gaze. "She says you're right," she whispered. "Who?" Eleanor asked, her voice shaking. "Diana?" Lily said simply. "She says you have to find out who did it before they try again." Naomi's stomach twisted. The quiet hospital room suddenly felt like a crime scene. Grayson's eyes blazed with a new dangerous clarity. "Then we find out," he said, his voice leaving no room for doubt. "We find out who tried to kill me before they get another chance." The monitors beeped steadily, like war drums calling the room to attention, and Naomi realized they had just stepped into a battle far bigger than hospital bureaucracy, because somewhere in the halls of St. Bartholomew, and maybe inside the Whitmore family itself, was someone who wanted the millionaire dead and was willing to try again. The words, "someone tried to kill me," sat in the air like an alarm no one could turn off. The entire room seemed to stiffen, every face reacting differently, Eleanor paling, Miles going rigid with lawyerly calculation, Lauren looking as though she'd been slapped. Naomi swallowed hard. "Do you have any idea who would want to hurt you?" Grayson's eyes darkened. "Too many," he admitted, his voice rough. "Business rivals, former partners, people I pushed out of deals when they got greedy. But this feels personal." Miles frowned, arms crossed. "Personal? Gray, you think this came from inside the family?" "I think someone had access to my car," Grayson said flatly. "It was locked inside the garage at the estate. No one touches it but me or someone who lives there." Naomi's pulse thudded. She thought of the Whitmore estate staff, drivers, gardeners, kitchen staff, people she'd worked alongside for years, people who smiled politely and shared gossip in the laundry room. Could one of them have wanted Grayson dead? Before anyone could respond, the door opened and a man in a charcoal suit entered. He carried himself with quiet authority, the kind that made people instinctively step back. "Detective Mason Clark, Dallas PD," he said, flashing a badge. "I'm here to speak with Mr. Whitmore about the accident." Miles's eyes narrowed. "You're a little late, Detective. The crash report was filed days ago." Detective Clark nodded. "Yes, sir. But there were some irregularities in the preliminary findings that caught our attention." Grayson's gaze sharpened. "Irregularities?" Clark glanced at Naomi and Lily, then at the family. "May I speak freely?" "Say it," Grayson ordered. The detective took a breath. "The crash investigators found evidence that the brake lines on your Lamborghini were cut, cleanly, with precision tools. This wasn't wear and tear, Mr. Whitmore. It was sabotage." Eleanor let out a sharp cry, clutching the arm of the sofa. Lauren's face drained of color. "So it's confirmed," Grayson said grimly. "Someone wanted me dead," Clark nodded. "We're opening a formal criminal investigation." I'll need a list of everyone with access to the estate garage, past and present. Employees, family, guests, anyone. Miles's lawyer brain was already firing on all cylinders. We'll get you that list today, he said. Naomi felt Lily's small hand tighten around her own. The little girl's eyes were wide but calm, as though she'd expected this. She says you already know who did it, Lily whispered, looking at Grayson. The room went silent. Grayson's jaw flexed. I have a guess, he said quietly. But I want proof before I say it out loud. Detective Clark nodded. We'll get it. In the meantime, you should consider security for your family and anyone close to you. Grayson's eyes flicked to Naomi, then back to the detective. They're staying under hospital protection until I say otherwise, he said firmly. Naomi, Lily, you don't go anywhere alone. Naomi nodded, though the thought made her stomach knot. Who do you think it is? She asked softly. Grayson hesitated, then answered in a voice low and cold. Someone who's been smiling at me for years, Eleanor gasped. Gray, you can't mean... I mean exactly that, he cut her off. Whoever did this thought they'd inherit everything if I died. But I'm not dead. And now I'm going to find out which one of them is willing to kill for money. The words hung heavy in the room, turning suspicion into a tangible presence. Naomi realized she was holding her breath. Lily spoke again, her small voice cutting through the tension like a church bell. She says the truth is coming soon. And when it does, someone will cry. Eleanor shivered, her hand going to the pearls at her throat. Miles turned to the detective. What do you need from us? Access, Clark said simply, and cooperation. We'll start with the staff, pull security footage, trace financials. If someone tampered with that car, we'll find them. Grayson nodded. Do it fast, because if they tried once, they'll try again. Naomi's stomach twisted. She thought of Lily's dream that morning, the one she had shared quietly on the bus. Mama, the man isn't alone anymore, but there's someone watching from the shadows. She hadn't understood it then. She did now, and as Detective Clark began taking statements, Naomi couldn't shake the feeling that the person who had tried to kill Grayson might already know they had failed, and might be planning their next move. And when the truth finally came out, it wouldn't just reveal a would-be killer. It would expose a betrayal that would tear the Whitmore family to pieces. The investigation moved quickly, as though a storm had been gathering for days and finally broke. Detective Clark returned that evening with preliminary findings that made the hospital room feel like a courtroom. We reviewed the estate's security footage from the night before the crash, he said, placing a tablet on the rolling table beside Grayson's bed. Take a look at this. The video played in silence, except for the low hum of the heart monitor. It showed the Whitmore garage, dimly lit, time-stamped just after midnight. A shadowed figure moved into frame, hood pulled over their head, face obscured. They knelt near the Lamborghini, gloved hands working with precision at the wheel well. The footage ended as they slipped back out into the night. Lauren clasped a hand to her mouth. Eleanor turned pale. Bill swore under his breath. Do you have any idea who that is? Clark asked, though his tone suggested he already had a suspect in mind. Grayson's green eyes narrowed. I'd know that walk anywhere, he said grimly. That's Trevor. Naomi's brow furrowed. Trevor? My head of security, Grayson said, voice edged with disbelief. I trusted that man with my life. Miles cursed again, louder this time. If it's Trevor, that means someone paid him. He wouldn't act alone. Eleanor's hand trembled as she gripped the arm of the chair. But why? What could possibly justify money? Grayson said flatly. Always money. If I had died, the control of Whitmore Holdings would have transferred to the board until Miles could take over. But during that window, someone could have consolidated power, sold off assets. Millions could have disappeared before anyone noticed. Detective Clark nodded. We're pulling Trevor's financials now. If he took a payment, we'll find it. But this goes deeper, Mr. Whitmore. He had inside access. Someone in your circle either directed him or gave him permission. The room went quiet. Naomi felt Lily press closer to her leg, the little girl's wide eyes scanning the adults as though she could see which one carried guilt like a stain. She says the one who did it is scared now," Lily said softly. "Scared because you're awake." Miles glanced at her, unsettled despite himself. Do you know who she means?" Lily nodded solemnly. "Yes, but she says you have to find out yourself, or you won't believe it." Lauren shivered. "That's chilling," she whispered. Grayson's gaze swept the room, lingering on each face, weighing, measuring. "Then we bring everyone in," he said finally. "Board members, key staff, anyone with access to the estate that night. If they wanted me gone, they can explain themselves to my face." Miles hesitated. "Gray, are you sure you're ready for that kind of confrontation?" "I wasn't ready to die either," Grayson said grimly. "But someone decided I should. So yes, I'm ready." Dr. Caldwell stepped closer, concern etched on his features. "You're still in recovery, Mr. Whitmore. Too much stress." "This isn't stress," Grayson cut him off. "This is survival. If we don't flush them out, they'll try again. And next time, I might not wake up." Naomi's heart pounded. She had seen Grayson angry before, in clipped phone calls, in the slam of a study door. But this was different. This was a man on the edge of reclaiming his life, and he would not be stopped. Detective Clark nodded. "We can arrange formal interviews. But, Mr. Whitmore, if you want to confront them directly, I suggest we control the setting. Safe location, limited audience." Grayson turned to Miles. "Call a board meeting here tomorrow. Everyone comes to me." Lauren looked anxious. "In this hospital room?" "Yes," Grayson said, his jaw set. "If they wanted me in a coffin, they can face me in this bed instead." Eleanor reached for his hand, tears brimming. "Grayson, be careful. The person who did this could be dangerous." "They already were," he said simply. Lily's small voice broke the heavy silence. "She says tomorrow will be the day the lights come on in the house." Naomi felt a chill despite the warm room. "What happens when the lights come on, sweetheart?" she asked softly. Lily's eyes met hers, clear and serious. "The shadows have nowhere left to hide." The room was quiet except for the rhythmic beep of the heart monitor, each sound like a countdown to the moment of truth. Naomi realized tomorrow wouldn't just decide who tried to kill Grayson, it would decide who the Whitmores really were when the masks came off. And somewhere, someone was already planning how to keep their secret buried, no matter who they had to hurt next. Morning came heavy and electric, like the air before a tornado. The VIP floor of St. Bartholomew was transformed into a war room. The Whitmore board members arrived one by one, polished, perfumed, perfectly poised, each escorted past security checkpoints Detective Clark had personally ordered. Naomi stood with Lily near the corner, feeling like an intruder and an anchor all at once. This wasn't her world. Tailored suits, diamond cufflinks, voices sharp enough to cut glass, but somehow she and Lily had become the center of it. Grayson sat upright in his hospital bed, strength returning to his frame. He wore a pressed shirt instead of the patient gown, his expression cold, calculated. No one spoke until Miles closed the door and nodded to the detective. "Let's begin," Grayson said, his voice steady, commanding. Clark wasted no time. "We have evidence that Mr. Whitmore's car was deliberately sabotaged. The security footage implicates Trevor, the head of estate security. We're currently pursuing him, but he hasn't been located. Today's purpose is simple: to find out who gave him access, who paid him, and why." A ripple went through the room, gasps, whispers. One board member muttering an oath under his breath. Grayson's green eyes scanned the faces. "Whoever wanted me dead had motive. If you think I won't find out who it was, you're mistaken. And when I do, I will make sure you answer for it." One of the senior board members, a man named Preston Hale, spoke first, his voice defensive. "Grayson, this is a tragedy, but surely you don't think one of us would stoop to—" "I think someone here wanted control of Whitmore Holdings badly enough to risk prison," Grayson cut him off. "And if you're innocent, you should want to help me find the one who isn't." Clark stepped forward, flipping open a folder. "We traced 2 suspicious wire transfers made within 48 hours of the crash. Large amounts, routed through offshore accounts. Both lead back to someone with estate access." Naomi's breath caught. She glanced at Lily, who was staring intently at the group, as if she could see beyond their faces. She says it's almost time, Lily whispered. Lauren turned, her face pale. Almost time for what? But before Lily could answer, the door burst open. A uniformed officer entered, speaking quickly to Clark. The detective's face hardened as he listened. They found Trevor, Clark announced. He was trying to cross the state line. He's in custody, and he's talking. Grayson's jaw tightened. What did he say? Clark's voice was low, deliberate. He claims he was paid to tamper with your car. The money came from an account belonging to someone in this very room. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Everyone froze. Whose account? Miles demanded. Clark's eyes swept the board members before landing on one person. Preston Hale. The room erupted. Shocked voices, accusations, Preston stammering denials. You're lying! Preston shouted, face flushing crimson. This is a setup. Miles stepped forward, his lawyerly tone icy. The transfers were traced to your Cayman account. Deny it all you want. Paper trails don't lie. Grayson's voice cut through the chaos. Why, Preston? You had power. You had money. Why try to kill me? Preston's bravado cracked, his shoulders sagging as though the weight of years had just caught up with him. Because you were going to take it all from me, he spat. You were restructuring the board, pushing me out. After everything I built, everything I sacrificed, you were going to erase me. You tried to erase me first, Grayson said coldly. Clark signaled the officers. Preston Hale, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder and attempted homicide. As the officers cuffed him, Preston sneered. You think you've won, Grayson. You saved your empire for now, but you'll never save it from yourself. You're still the same ruthless man who built it. Grayson's expression didn't change, but his voice was quieter when he spoke. Not anymore. The door closed behind Preston, leaving a silence so deep Naomi could hear the steady beep of the heart monitor again. Eleanor sank into a chair, tears spilling freely now. It could have been one of us, she whispered. We could have lost you and never known why. Grayson reached for the water on the tray, his hands steady. You didn't lose me, he said. But I think we all lost something a long time ago. Trust. Lily climbed onto the chair beside his bed, her little hand resting over his. She says it's okay, she said softly. The house isn't dark anymore. The lights are on, but now you have to choose what kind of man you'll be. Grayson looked at her, then at Naomi, then at his family, and for the first time since waking, his face softened into something almost peaceful. We rebuild, he said simply. All of us. Starting now. But as Naomi exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, Detective Clark's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his brow furrowing. Mr. Whitmore, he said carefully, you should know. Trevor isn't done talking. He says Preston wasn't the only one involved. The room went still again, dread creeping back in like a shadow. Naomi's heart clenched. If there was another conspirator, it meant the danger wasn't over, and whoever was still out there might be even closer than any of them imagined. Someone who hadn't just betrayed Grayson's company, but his heart. The air in the room thickened again, heavy with the weight of unfinished truth. Everyone exchanged tense glances, knowing the nightmare wasn't over yet. Detective Clark stepped forward. Trevor claims he wasn't the mastermind. He says there was a second payment, smaller but significant, routed from a personal account, not corporate funds. Grayson's green eyes hardened. Whose account? Clark hesitated, then spoke the name slowly, like dropping a stone into deep water. Lauren Whitmore. The silence that followed was deafening. Lauren's face went ghostly pale, her manicured hands trembling. That's impossible, she whispered. I didn't. Miles spun toward her, disbelief and hurt colliding on his face. Lauren, tell me this isn't true. Tears welled in her eyes, and for a moment she looked like she might deny it. Then her shoulders sagged. I didn't mean for him to get hurt that badly. she said, her voice cracking. "I only wanted him scared, enough to back off the restructuring plan. If Grayson dismantled the board, Miles would be ruined. We'd lose everything." Miles stepped back as though her confession had struck him physically. "So you hired someone to tamper with the brakes of my brother's car?" "I thought it would just make him crash. Minor injuries, something to slow him down," Lauren pleaded. "I never wanted him to die." "Intent doesn't erase the fact that you nearly killed me," Grayson said, his voice low and dangerous. Eleanor pressed a hand to her mouth, sobbing softly. Naomi could feel Lily pressing close, her small voice steady as always. "She says forgiveness is the hardest part, but it's the only way to keep the house full of light." Grayson's gaze shifted from Lauren to Miles, his jaw tight. "What happens next is your decision, brother." Miles stood frozen, torn between rage and heartbreak. Finally, he looked at his wife, his expression hardening. "Lauren, you need to leave, right now. And you need to cooperate fully with the investigation. Whatever we're done." Lauren's face crumpled. She looked around the room, but no one came to her defense. "I'm sorry," she whispered, before turning and leaving under the escort of Detective Clark. The door clicked shut, leaving behind a silence that felt like both an ending and a beginning. Grayson leaned back against his pillows, exhaustion lining his face, but also something new. Relief. "It's over," he murmured. "Finally over." Naomi sat closer, her voice gentle. "Not over, just different now. You've got a chance to make things right." Grayson turned to her, his expression softening. "Then help me, Naomi. Stay. Help me build something better, with the company, with my family, with myself." Naomi blinked, startled by the invitation, but before she could respond, Lily climbed up onto the bed and curled beside Grayson like she had been doing it her whole life. "She says Diana is smiling now," Lily whispered. "She says you found the way back." Grayson's hand covered Lily's small one, his green eyes glistening. "Tell her I'll never go back to the dark." Eleanor stood and approached the bed, tears still shining, but her voice steady. "Maybe we all needed this," she said quietly, "to see how close we came to losing you and each other." Miles nodded, still reeling but resolute. "Then we rebuild, Gray, from the ground up. A company we can be proud of, a family that actually acts like one." Grayson looked at Naomi then, a faint smile on his face. "And maybe a life that isn't just marble halls and closed doors." Naomi felt her chest tighten, an unfamiliar warmth spreading through her. For the first time since she'd been hired all those years ago, she didn't feel like just the maid. She felt seen. John Parker's voice came in, warm and resonant, pulling the listener close. "I'm John Parker, and remember, every story hides a truth." He let the words linger before continuing. "And the truth here is powerful. Forgiveness doesn't erase pain, but it builds a bridge strong enough to walk across it together." Tell me in the comments where you're listening from, and if you've ever seen a moment when forgiveness changed everything. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss more stories like this, because we have so many more to tell. Grayson, Naomi, and Lily sat together in that hospital room, not as billionaire, maid, and child, but as something new, a family forged in fire, betrayal, and redemption. And somewhere, in whatever quiet place she now lived, Diana's spirit was smiling, because the house wasn't dark anymore, and love had finally turned the lights back on.